Well, this morning I am wrapping up our 2-week series on Revelation. That's right, 2 weeks to cover all of Revelation, no problem. And ultimately, we're wrapping up a year-long series called The Big Picture. And we started a year ago in Genesis, and now we are finishing up in Revelation. And it's been my hope that as we've gone through this, that hopefully, we can't go in depth on the entire Bible in a year, but hopefully it's inspired you to read more, to maybe ask some questions, to have conversations with people, friends and family, small group. If you're not in a small group, if you don't have a group here that you can communicate with and ask questions of, we are doing a 5-week series. There's a paper here in your program that if you would like to, hey, let's try this small group thing, it's going to be going along with the sermon series starting in September. So if you're not a part of a small group, I'd love for you to hop in and be a part of that. But hopefully you've gotten just a little taste of the big picture, and it's encouraged you to read more and to study and, again, ask some questions. And this morning, I'm covering the last 4 chapters of Revelation, which in now 28 minutes, I have to cover all of heaven and hell. No problem. Yeah, thanks. Here's the thing. I'm not going to cover all of heaven and hell today. But I'm hopefully, again, it will prompt you to ask some questions and to dig in and study for yourself. I did in the program put a couple of resources that I've found helpful over the last 4 years. So most of you know that 4.5 years ago, our daughter Abigail passed away. And when she passed away, I really wanted to understand heaven, and I wanted to understand eternity. So these 3 books in particular have been really helpful for me in my understanding of Revelation and eternity and what it looks like for those of us who follow Jesus. And then there's also a sermon series that we did 4 years ago called What's So Great About Heaven, and you can find those on our website, and there's a link in the program for you. So again, I'm not going to cover every aspect of eternity today, but hopefully just get us thinking about some things and just kind of spend some time together in the end of Revelation. Just a reminder from a few things that Byron mentioned last week. Revelation reveals, and it reveals the truths of the end times. Now, those truths are wrapped up in imagery and metaphor and prophecy. And you can land either these are very literal or they're very figurative. And there are people who follow Jesus who land in both of those camps. And there are people who think it's very literal, and we can get into that, and it's figurative. There are scholars and Christians who land on both sides. To me, none of that is important. Where you land in figurative or literal isn't as important as the truth that John writes this to reveal that at the end, Jesus wins. That's the point. Jesus wins. And it was written to Christians who were struggling under the rule of cruel emperors and bad governments. Luckily, we don't have to worry about bad governments and cruel leaders in our time. There are a lot of things that we can take out of Revelation, and today we're going to look at a few of those. But again, just a reminder that last week, Byron said and explained that Jesus came not as a victorious and strong lion, although he is that. He came and he won because he is a slain lamb. Ultimately, Jesus wins because of the cross and the resurrection. And those in the first century and all believers throughout history, including us, need to put our hope in the Lamb, not in the victorious and strong lion. Revelation shows us what it's actually going to look like when God finally finishes his story of redemption, that we are redeemed, that we are made whole and complete. Here's what John says in Revelation 21. And he also said, "It is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To all who are thirsty, I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. All who are victorious will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." If you don't get anything out of today, may you get and hear God saying, it is finished. At some point in time in world history, it will all be complete. The story of this earth and this lifetime will come to an end, and a new story will begin. So what does that look like? First, Jesus brings final justice to all who oppose God. When we read Revelation 19 and 20, we see a vision of a final battle, and it's written from two different perspectives, but it really tells the same story. Revelation 19, 11 through 21, and 20, 8 through 15, which are in your program and outline, give some images and numbers, again, that can be taken very literally or figuratively. No matter where you land, whether you think it's very literal or figurative, in the shortest version, this final justice means that the devil, evil, and people who have opposed God for their lives get what they want. They get to be eternally separated from God. Now, here's the difficult part, and something I struggled with for years. How can a loving God send people to an eternal separation from him? How could he separate himself? How could a loving God send someone to hell? And here's where I land in it. A loving God would do that because a loving God wouldn't force someone to be with him forever who doesn't want to be with him. Al, who plays guitar, and up here at the end, we have, I told him yesterday at practice and this morning, he'll do a little guitar lick thing, and I love it. It's like his calling card. Al, he's going to be a senior, right? Senior in high school. So just picture Al going away to college and finding the woman of his dreams. Like many of us did, we go and we find the woman and start dating, and everything's... Why are you guys laughing so hard? Finds the woman of his dreams, just imagine. And brings her home, and Mom, Dad, this is the woman of my dreams. And things are going good, and he finally says, hey, hon, will you marry me? I want to be with you forever. She says, no. You're not the man of my dreams. So what does Al do? He takes her captive and puts her in a basement. Would that be loving? No. But yet we want a God who says, hey, take all these people who have said, no, I want no part of you, take them captive and force them to be with you forever. That's not loving to me. So for me, what Revelation 19 and 20 show is that there is justice and there is judgment to those who choose not to follow him. I'm going to give the Cliff Notes version of both of these. Hopefully you'll read them for yourselves. But Revelation 19, 11 through 21, a Jesus who is called faithful and true shows up for a battle. And he's riding a white horse, and he's in a robe. And before the battle even starts, the robe is covered in blood. And it's his blood. It's the blood of the slain lamb. And out of his mouth comes this sword, faithfulness and truth, and it brings judgment. There's a beast and a false prophet and kings and leaders and armies from around the world who have been opposed to Jesus are destroyed by this sword, faithfulness and truth. The beast and the false prophet are thrown into a lake of burning sulfur. And then Revelation 20, starting with verse 8, Satan this time gathers his army, and fire comes from the sky and destroys the army. And the devil is then thrown in to the burning sulfur along with the beast and the false prophet. And then we have a final judgment using the book of life for all humanity. And both of these visions tell of judgment and accountability that will happen. How and all of that, again, we can discuss, and we can be on different sides, whether it's very literal or figurative, but there will be judgment. And anyone who chooses that they don't want to be a part of God's kingdom and his family will get what they want. Now, one of the videos Byron sent last week, if you're not in our email list, hopefully you'll sign up. All through this, we've been sending out videos that talk about Scripture. And one of them Byron sent last week, the person talking about Revelation explained it this way. The dragon Babylon, and all who choose them are eternally quarantined. Now, 4 years ago, you would have used the word quarantine, and most of us maybe wouldn't have had context, but thanks to COVID, we understand what quarantine means. It's not a great thing. So the dragon Babylon and all who choose them are forever quarantined. They are forever separated from God, which means everything good, love and grace and mercy and hope and joy and creation and beauty, all of that eternally quarantined, separated. And again, there are a lot of metaphors and thoughts on what the Bible says and what Revelation says from different scholars. But for me, the main point on judgment and on hell is that you are forever without God. That is the judgment. But I didn't want to spend long talking about hell and judgment, because for me, there's something better than talking about the judgment, and that is the hope that we have when we do choose to follow God. We can have hope that even when life is hard, even when it's full of trials and difficulties, we have final victory, and that is the second thing I see in the end of Revelation, that the king and kingdom are reunited and eternity begins. The king and the kingdom are reunited. And Revelation 21 and 22 use 3 Old Testament examples to describe what it looks like for God to be with his people. First is that there's a new heaven and a new earth. Now, just as a side note, this probably refers to a new sky, an atmosphere, and earth. But again, there are scholars that land on both sides of that. But there is a new heaven and a new earth. Revelation 21:1 says, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone." So there's this new heaven and new earth, this new creation of what we have now, which leads to the second illustration John uses, is the new Garden of Eden. When I think about a new heaven and a new earth, I think about the original heaven and earth, which is the Garden of Eden. Then the angel showed me a river with the river of life, clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. It flowed down the center of the main street. On each side of the river grew a tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit with a fresh crop each month. The leaves were used for medicine to heal the nations. No longer will there be a curse upon anything, for the throne of God and the Lamb will be there, and his servants will worship him. I don't think it's coincidence that the Bible starts with the garden and ends with the garden. And in this garden, God is with his people. And it's perfection and it's beauty, and he's interacting with Adam and Eve, and here he's interacting with his kingdom. The big picture from Genesis through Revelation is that God wants relationship with you. He wants relationship with us. God desires a kingdom with his angelic and supernatural creatures to be able to interact with humanity on earth. Now, I just read a book by Michael Hauser called Supernatural, and here's how he explains it. Since the fall, God had been trying to revive his original goal for Eden, to live with both his divine and human family on earth. God had told Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply, thereby spreading God's good rule over the rest of the planet. God wanted the whole earth to be a place where heaven and earth meet, where humanity could enjoy the divine, and where the divine could enjoy earth and humanity. There's a new Garden of Eden, back to the way it was originally created before sin and death entered. And then we see a new Jerusalem. And this new Jerusalem is found starting with chapter 21, verse 2. I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And then it goes on in verses 10 through 27 to talk about this new Jerusalem. And you really get into a lot of numbers and some stuff in this new Jerusalem. Now, most of you know a few weeks ago I went and preached at Teen Week at church camp in southern Indiana. And I preached about heaven one night because I wanted the high schoolers to know that there's a hope, that there's something to look forward to. And afterwards, one of the girls came up to me and said, hey, my grandma has a plan for heaven that when we get there, we meet at the Middle West Gate. I said, Middle West Gate, what are you talking about? And she brought me to this verse. So I'm going to read it. This is an example of something you could take very literal or figurative. Grandma takes it very literal. The city wall was broad and high, with 12 gates guarded by 12 angels. And the names of the 12 tribes of Israel were written on the gates. There were 3 gates on each side, east, north, south, and west. So this family is meeting on the middle gate on the west side. So if you're one of those people who take it literally, make sure you have a plan for your family, what gate you're meeting at. Now, is it literal? Maybe. Or maybe grandma's going to be wandering around New Jerusalem and Eden for a long time looking for this gate. I don't know. But either way, she'll have forever, so it's fine. Now, what does this reuniting look like? What does this kingdom and king coming together look like? Again, there are a lot of metaphors and a lot of things that we could talk about, but I want to share 4 things that have me most excited about eternity to hopefully maybe get you thinking about it and get you excited about it. Because here's the deal. I think a lot of us, me included 4 years ago, have a very small view of what eternity in heaven look like. I used to think heaven would be a lot of clouds, some harps, angels and seraphim flying around, and we're just in a forever worship service. And I really used to think like, man, I can't wait to get heaven, and I'm gonna play on the stage with David Crowder for like 1,000 years, and it's just I'm gonna be part of the band. Can't wait. But if that's my view, if that's your view of heaven, it's very narrow, and eventually, especially if you're a person who doesn't like singing, you're like, this heaven place doesn't sound exciting. So I think at worst, it leads us to not really care about heaven. At best, if we have a narrow view of eternity, it's incomplete. But at worst, we don't really even look forward to it. So if we don't look forward to it, why are we going to share it with other people? So here are 4 things that get me excited that I've learned about and I truly believe about eternity. The first is our eternity will be a physical place. There will be a new earth. There will be a city, a new Jerusalem. Heaven and earth will come together. There will be an Eden. Here's what Jesus says. Jesus is talking and he says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There's more than enough room in the Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will always be with me where I am, and you know the way to where I'm going. Jesus uses words like rooms and place, physical things. Now, here's the really important thing about the word place that Jesus used. He could have used multiple words for the word place, but the word he used was a word that meant an addition that's built onto a patriarch's home whenever you get married as an ancient Jew. So here's what happened. In ancient Jewish times, you would go and get married. Alan got married. This time she said yes. Didn't have to tie her up. So just picture Alan deciding, I finally found the lady of my dreams. She says yes. So instead of them planning the wedding and doing everything, in ancient Jewish culture, the groom would go back to the parents' home. Going back home. You thought you had him gone? Nope, he's coming back home. And he's going to build a room onto their house. And that room is where Alan and the bride will be. They join onto dad's home. And eventually, the room gets finished and the wedding can happen. Now, if it takes 3 months, it takes 3 months. There was no date. It's not like they didn't send out, hey, save the date for 6 months down the road. Well, it might take Alan 9 months to build this room. However long it takes, eventually the room gets done, and Jake says, hey, Alan's best friend, you go and tell the bride he's coming. The wedding's about to start. So his best friend goes and tells the bride and all of the family, the groom is on his way. The groom shows up and says, let's get married, and now we're going to go live in this room, in this home of the patriarch. This is what Jesus is saying. He says, I'm the groom, and I'm going to prepare a room, a place for you to live in Dad's house forever. And one day I'm going to come to you and take you back. Heaven, eternity, will be a physical place. Second, there will be no sin, death, or sorrow in our eternity. Probably my favorite verse in the Bible. Revelation 21:4. He will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, or sorrow, or crying, or pain. All these things are gone forever. In between services, my sister texted me. One of her friends from Bedford, a 25-year-old young man, died suddenly last night. The stark reality that is here on earth, we are all terminal. We are all going to die. Could be way too young, or we could live to be 110. But at some point, the stark reality is that we are terminal. Romans 6 says we've earned a wage. We earn something by our sin, and that is death. But not in heaven. In heaven, in eternity, there's no more death. There's no more sorrow. There's no more pain. Here's what Chip Ingram, one of the books that I mentioned at the beginning, here's what Chip Ingram says. We think we're in the land of the living, headed to the land of the dying. In reality, we are in the land of the dying, headed to the land of the living. What a shift. See, we think that this world and this life is all about this life, and we try to build our own kingdoms, and we do things, and we want experiences because, man, there's death. And then especially if we have a skewed view of eternity, then we're in a worship service forever. So let's have as much fun as we can now, right? No, we are in the land of the dying, headed toward true life, to the land of the living. The third thing, all things are new in our eternity. Revelation 21:5, the one sitting on the throne said, look, I'm making everything new, which includes a new earth, which we've already kind of mentioned. Now, I've been to a lot of places around the world, and hopefully you've got to travel. I want you to picture or think about your favorite place on earth, the most beautiful, epic, wonderful place you've ever been. First service, I said, if you haven't moved, you haven't gone very far, maybe that's Martinsville for you. It's probably a bad example, but maybe it is. Maybe you love Martinsville, and that's like, oh yeah, that. Anyway, for me, it's the Grand Canyon. When I went to the Grand Canyon, I'd seen pictures and I even videos, but then I showed up, and it's this vast, enormous, beautiful, amazing creation. And it blew my mind. And I think heaven, all those things I think about, and eternity, as we think about, here's what it's going to be like. Whatever we picture, whatever we think the best place on earth is, it will not compare to what eternity looks like. It will be more whole, more colorful, more right. We won't have litter, and we won't have the kids pulling on our shirts saying, I'm hungry. We won't have all the frustrations of, TSA. We won't have any of those things. We'll just be able to travel and see this new, perfect new earth. There's a new earth. Now I think our earth is pretty good, okay? Here are some things that prove to me that science points to a creative creator God. It couldn't be accidental. Our earth is tilted exactly 23.5 degrees. If it was just a little bit off one way or another, we couldn't survive. The distance from the sun to the earth is called the Goldilocks zone. It's not too far, it's not too close, it's just right. Things like water, the atmosphere, having a blanket of 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. These things don't just happen by coincidence. Scientists have discovered over 200 conditions that are required on our earth for us to exist. 200. Whoops, that was an accident. No, there's a creator God, and this earth is broken. It's sinful. It's not whole and complete. So as beautiful and amazing as it is, the new earth is going to be better. And here's a new thing that really gets me excited. New bodies. I woke up this morning. I'm at the age now where I wake up and I wonder how I hurt myself while I was asleep. I went to bed perfectly healthy last night. And I have something, I'm going to have to go to the chiropractor. I hurt my back in my sleep. Not in heaven. I'm not going to hurt. I'll be able to stretch and be flexible. Now here's the thing. I don't know what my new body will look like. I think about that a lot. Like, am I going to be 20-year-old Troy? I mean, 20-year-old Troy was pretty good. If I do say so myself. Rachel would agree. That's when she married me. So am I going to be 20? Or here's something. Am I going to look like George Clooney, who my wife thinks is gorgeous, but everyone will know that's Troy? They'll be like, hey, Troy, he looks like George Clooney. Dude, like, I don't know what my new body will look like, but I will have a new body. You will have a new body. Here's what 1 Corinthians says. In the same way, with the resurrection of the dead, our earthly bodies are planted in the ground when we die, but they will be raised to live forever. Our bodies are buried in brokenness, but they will be raised in glory. They are buried in weakness, but they will be raised in strength. We will have a new earth, and our bodies will be whole and complete, which leads to the fourth thing I'm excited about. We will have whole relationships with God and each other in eternity. We won't have the brokenness and the difficulty of relationships with each other. Just like in the garden, we'll have whole and complete relationships with God. Now, I don't know what our relationships are going to look like. There's this passage in Matthew chapter 22 where Jesus is asked about marriage in heaven and after the resurrection. And his response points to, we're not going to be married. Now, again, that could be literal or figurative. I don't know. But I do know we'll have relationships. Because here's the thing. God is a God of relationships. One of my favorite things about this world is relationships. It's about being able to spend time together and laugh together, make memories together. One of the best things about our world today is relationships. So why would God in eternity, in perfection, say, no relationships? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't compute. Now, will we be married? Probably not. But will I know Rachel? I think I'll know Rachel. And I think I'll know her in a more complete whole way without the stuff that sometimes happens in marriage. I'll know my kids better. I'll know Alan better. And, you know, he was in first service, so second service, he's out back. But I can't wait to get to heaven. And then Al's like, hey, remember that Sunday where you talked about me and I was out back and everybody came up to me afterwards and was like, hey, Al, I heard you're going to get married, which you all should do. I can't wait for that. There's going to be whole relationships, and we're going to be able to laugh and spend forever together. And we will be able to have whole relationships with God. Here's what Revelation 21:3 says. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. I use the word shalom a lot. It's one of my favorite words, and it's a Hebrew word that means wholeness and complete. And I sometimes say shalom. If you've ever gotten an email from me, most of the time I write shalom. And it's this word of blessing. May wholeness and completeness be over you. And when we get to eternity, we will have a shalom relationship with God. No more separation because of our sin and our brokenness. No more wondering and guilt and questioning, does God love me? Am I loving him enough? None of that. It's all perfect and whole because he will be with his people. One of the best parts of the garden, I think, is Adam and Eve walking and God being there, and they're in the garden and talking. And it's just a beautiful picture of a whole relationship. So what does that mean for us? What is Revelation 19 through 22, that there's going to be a judgment, but there's also going to be an eternity of reuniting? For me, it means that there's a choice. We all have a choice. Am I going to say, I want God's kingdom, and I'm going to accept his love, and I'm going to love him back? Or am I going to be the king or queen of my own kingdom? It's all going to be about me here on earth, which is really a choice about not just here on earth, but forever. Here's how Revelation ends. This is Jesus talking. Look, I am coming soon, bringing my reward with me to repay all the people according to their deeds. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who wash their robes. They will be permitted to enter through the gates of the city and eat from the fruit of the tree of life. Outside the city are dogs, the sorcerers, the sexually immoral, the murderers, the idol worshipers, and all who love to live a lie. Jesus says, I'm coming back. And if you choose me, you're going to be with me forever. And if not, then you're going to be outside of the city. And here's what he ends with. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to give you this message for the churches. I am both the source of David and the heir to his throne, and I am the bright and morning star. The Spirit and the bride say, come. Let anyone who hears this say, come. Let anyone who is thirsty come. Let anyone who desires drink freely from the water of life. This morning, it's all of our choices whether we want to choose Jesus or not. And some of us chose Jesus a long time ago. And in reality, maybe we're not choosing him like we should. Yeah, we come to church and we love him, but most of our lives are still wrapped around our own kingdom. And maybe some of you have never chosen Jesus. You've never accepted, hey, here's the opportunity for you to choose love forever. And for whatever reason, you're just trying to figure Jesus out, or you've been hurt by the church, or there have been some turd Christians who have done stupid things. Guilty, right? And because of us and because of the church, you don't understand Jesus. But this morning, the opportunity is for all of us to just take a step closer to Jesus. He says, come. And that's our opportunity this morning. So one of the difficulties is this word soon. I'm coming soon. This was written 2,000 years ago. I pray every day, Jesus, come back. May soon be now. It might be another 2,000 years. It might be 20,000 years, but Jesus is coming back. And where we land is up to us. So we're going to sing a song that just invites Jesus to come. And it's a global, it's a come and restore your kingdom, but it's also a Jesus, come now into my life, come and move and change me. Maybe for the first time, maybe for the 100th, but to come. So I'm going to invite you to just spend about 20 or 30 seconds praying and inviting God to speak to you and to move you where you need to. And then I'll pray for all of us, and we'll sing a song. And if you need to make a decision this morning, we'll invite you to come. And Jake, who's one of our elders, can meet you up front. Or if you just need to use these stairs and talk to God alone, then you can do that. So if you would pray, and then we'll pray together. God, I thank you that you are on your throne even now, and that you are King. And Father, sometimes in our lives we make ourselves kings and queens, and we confess that to you this morning, that we sin and we struggle. But I thank you for the hope of eternity, the hope that one day you are coming back forever, and that you'll be with us, that there will be a new heaven and a new earth and a new garden and a new Jerusalem where you dwell with your people forever. But thank you for being a God who gives us that choice, that we can choose you. So this morning, God, may wherever you're speaking into each of us, may we move and may we be bold to invite you to come into our lives and change us, maybe for the first time, maybe for the 1,000th time, and to come and bring back restore your kingdom forever. Speak now through your Holy Spirit and through these songs in Jesus' name. Amen.